There must be some other way. I couldn't do it, Salamander. I couldn't do it. I stood there with this man's life in my hands, and with this powder, I couldn't use it.
I gave you the chance to become something, somebody. You failed to take it, huh?
There must be some other way.
Oh, of course, my friend. Don't worry.
What?
Don't worry. You try, you fail. So what, huh? The moon doesn't fall out of the sky. Come on, sit down, have a drink, huh? Cheer up. We find another way.
I really did try.
Of course you did. Don't worry. Forget it, huh? I have an alternative. Your health. I hope you will appreciate this one. It's made for me especially in Alaska. One chance, my friend. I said one chance.
Some trouble in the kitchens, leader. The new man says he's seen someone in the kitchen garden.
Very well. Oh, I see to that, will you? Suicide, of course. Such a pity.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined with...
Hello, it's Scott.
Hello, Scott. This week we are continuing our look into the second Doctor story, The Enemy of the World, with parts 3 and 4. Last week I did an On This Day segment, if you're curious as to what the world was like on this day in history. So we're going to jump straight into Scott's got a little bit more in the writer's corner to talk about the creation of this episode. So Scott, why don't you just immediately take it away from me?
Yes, of course, last week we did David Whittaker, one of the three whiters. They are white.
The writers.
They're all white.
Yeah, most assuredly.
One of the three writers, and also the director of this. So Barry Letts this week was born in 1925, and he became inspired to join the movie industry when he and his mate Richard Attenborough, name dropping right there, would go and see movies every weekend, deciding they could be an actor too. Basically, in his autobiography, he said, if this famous actor could act with this kind of face, this ugly face, then why can't I be an actor too?
I'm hotter than this dude.
So he started his career at 15 in 1940. During a summer holiday, he was searching for a job and because he wanted to be in the theatre, he wound up being an assistant stage manager at a local theatre, which is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Are you here?
Jesus.
Yeah. Then after a 7-week summer vacation, he was offered a full-time job. He soon left school and began a career in stage. 6 months later, he became an actor at one of the theatres, other companies in Wales, and acted for 3 years before being called up into the Navy in 1943, which obviously wartime.
Oofed.
Always a fun time. Before joining the Navy, however, he was offered an exciting contract from Alien Studios, who wanted to make him a film star when he would leave the Navy. When he got out, however, he realised that things had changed drastically, and instead of being one out of the few actors chosen, there was a lot instead. There was 40 people under contract, and he got kind of lost in the crowd.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Just to consider, one of the other actors in this group was Christopher Lee. So
oh wow, Jesus.
So a lot of stiff competition there. Alien Studios dropped him after about 2 years, but he was able to meet his future wife in the very last film he shot with them, and the two were married for nearly 60 years, which is a lovely story to come out of that.
Nice. Yeah.
He eventually wound up in front of the camera in his 50s as he found a lot of steady work in TV shows and TV movies between 1950 and 1966. He had over 60 credits on IMDb over these 16 years, which is Jesus. One of his first TV gigs was to act with Patrick Troughton. in a Guy Fawkes drama,
Oh.
and the two men became immediate friends due to the fact they were both heavy smokers. So they just go into smoke breaks constantly. Some of his most notable work was also starring as Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland TV movie. He was in 2 episodes of Coronation Street and an episode of The Avengers, which is obviously heavily inspired this episode of Doctor Who in terms of like costume and
Yeah,
theme.
I feel like I've been hearing the word Avengers so much these past few weeks. Right.
We really ought to do The Avengers at some point.
No.
In 1960, he decided to enroll in a BBC directing course. However, he was turned down because he didn't have enough experience in TV. He tried again in 1966 because his acting had become drying up. Because there was basically no security in acting because, you know, there's a lot of lapses between 2 jobs often.
Yeah.
So he gained a 2-year contract as a director for BBC. He was 40 at this point, and he called this his midlife crisis. So yeah, it's a very late start to his career as a director.
That is an extremely late start. Yeah. Wow.
Especially in the 60s.
Yeah, most people are dead by then in the 60s.
Letts pitched a few stories to the Doctor Who team in 1966. One of the ideas was a story about a humanoid life form who developed into butterflies. However, this was deemed too sophisticated for his show, but would eventually be worked into the plot for The Mutants in 1972, which Letts was the producer of. I haven't seen The Mutants in a while. I don't remember a subplot ever happening in that story, but I'll take his word for it. Some of his first gigs was to direct episodes of Z Cars and The Newcomers, which he also wrote for. I've never heard of these shows.
No, neither have I.
Then, after about a year into his contract, he was contacted by Innes Lloyd, who was producer on Doctor Who. He was leaving after this episode as well. But in the end, obviously, he was contracted for The Enemy of the World, which we're covering right now. He was quite unhappy with his work on Enemy of the World, as he didn't enjoy the scripts and had a hard time casting, because when he arrived, there was only a single draft of episode 1 to go off. We talked about this last week a little bit, as well as a vague description about what happened in the other episodes. Usually directors would be given the script for a complete story, rather than, you know, the first script and then just a basic outline. So yeah, he found it difficult to cast, but I would say the casting was really well done in this story.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody that's really miscast in it. You know, the writing, sure. Like, how did they tell him the story of episode 3? Because like nothing happens in episode 3, but
Yeah.
you know, I can understand some of his like issues with the story, but I still think it's some of the like even like story wise, it's really compelling, especially for like a classic Who story. It's like a political thriller, you know. So yeah. I don't get his complaints. He's just a grumpy man.
Yeah, I could imagine it's just like 40 years removed from the experience of working on the show has made him more negative, and he also at the time he couldn't view this episodes again because it was missing for so long. I mean, obviously episode 3 was the only one that was in existence, so of course it's the worst one. So of course he was negative about his experience.
Yeah.
We'll get into that.
Episode 3 sucks.
He basically criticized the scripts for being full of ideas and imagery instead of concentrating on a strong story of simple shooting, and he had to simplify things as much as possible. Again, this came down to David Whittaker wanting too much things in terms of like, we can't get this budgeted out, we could have to make it more simple. Like last week we talked about how the opening was supposed to be at a crowded beach, which...
Yes, because the writer decided to write with no regards to budget or like realisticness of like a shooting. I don't know how I was trying to word that sentence, but it was not worded well. But you understood what I was trying to kind of say.
Yes. He also wanted to be way more ambitious with his actual directing choices, but because this was a 25-minute show recorded in a 75-minute block, he had to make the production as simple as possible too. So... Again, just very difficult to make Doctor Who in the 60s. There's not much budget allocated or time.
Yeah, but that's what made it so good, you know? It was cheap. They could pump it out and people watched it still. Like.
Yeah. A year after Enemy of the World, he was approached again, but this time to produce Doctor Who. He was offered this position from Sean Sutton, who had been made head of drama at the BBC, replacing Sidney Newman. Barry Letts had become friends with Sean before this, as Sean had become a director, and Barry was one of his regular actors he would use over and over again. He would also cast Patrick Troughton and Roger Delgado quite often as well, who would of course play the Master, who we're talking about next month, which is I'm excited for that episode.
Yeah.
Barry confessed that he thought nobody else would have taken the job at that time because Doctor Who was on the skids, in his words. The show's viewing figures were dropping, and the show had a problem with scripts coming in on time. It was a nightmare, apparently, which is interesting because Russell T Davies kind of came on under the same conditions, basically, and nobody else wanted the job, apparently, which is fascinating how it just keeps happening to Doctor Who.
Time is a flat circle, you know. Everything just repeats over and over and over.
And of course, his partner Terence Dix, he was script editor of the show at this time, he would stay on till the end of Barry Letts' run, and Terence Dix would basically say that Barry became the producer of the show, saved the show and his job. Barry would treat Terence as an equal, giving Terence more authority over his scripts than before, and the two men would actually have a long partnership, like basically it would last until their deaths, basically, which is lovely to hear. And basically what Barry Letts wanted to do was to involve him as much as possible. Like, instead of just staying cooped up in an office all day, come on set, you have the shows made, and you'll get a better understanding how to actually edit these scripts. One of Barry Letts' first innovations on the show as producer was to change the filming schedule. So instead of recording one episode per week, they'd record 2 episodes every fortnight. Fortnight meme insert here. Please.
No, I will not.
This was far easier as we didn't have to tear down the sets every week, because before the directors would have to spend an entire night setting up the studio, and there was a chance they wouldn't have been able to do a floor plan or work out the blocking with an actor before filming. Sounds like a complete nightmare.
That does sound like a nightmare. That's insane.
During End of the World, Patrick Troughton said he was reluctant to do a third series because the schedule was so tough, because this is 40 episodes a year. Barry Letts apparently suggested to him that he should ask to do 26 episodes a year instead. I'm not sure if this is entirely true. This could be just him making up shit in his autobiography, but it sounds accurate enough, so I'll take him at his word. He would then
Nobody would lie in an autobiography. That would be illegal.
He would then implement this change during his run of his show, and the 26 episode count would last for around 16 years until the budget got cut and they had to make do with 13 episodes instead. Letts asked if he could get a producer-director contract for Doctor Who, so he wound up directing episodes as well as producing them. He directed the last 5 episodes of Inferno after Douglas Camfield had his heart attack, which we discussed last month, interestingly enough. And then he would direct the opening to Season 8 with Terror of the Autons, which we're also discussing next month. It's funny how this all comes in together.
Jesus.
He would also direct... He would also direct Carnival of Monsters and Planet with Spiders during his era. Barry Letts was keen to write for a show during the 70s, however, there was a rule at the BBC that producers couldn't write for their own show. We've discussed this quite a bit. I never thought of this before, but the rule was actually in place because the BBC considered that if it would be wrong if a producer could just write for a show because it would put other writers out of work, which I think is a fair assessment of a situation.
It's kind of like I can see both sides of it, you know, because like if you're producing a show, you care about it, and if you're a producer and a writer, like sure, you're gonna want to write things for your own thing, but also like, you know, if you're a writer and you're not producing, you want to be writing something, and you're not getting jobs because the producer's decided he wants to be a writer today, you know.
Yeah. And also last month we discussed that the time meddler had to be assigned to the producer or script editor very last minute, basically because they couldn't find any other writers. which I feel like if the rules are in place, maybe Verity Lambert could have written the episode herself or something like that. But yeah, it's tough to find writers sometimes. So if the producer could write for their own show, it'd make things easier at some points.
Yeah, I could see that.
To get around the BBC rules, Barry collaborated with his friend Robert Sloman and came up with a pseudonym Guy Leopold to write The Demons, which we've done this 2 years ago at this point. The duo went on to write The Time Monster, The Green Death, and Planet of the Spiders. Barry Letts' last job as producer was to oversee the Fourth Doctor's first episode, Robot, and he was also the man responsible for casting Tom Baker, which might be the most iconic piece of casting in science fiction history. I can't think of any more notable actors. I expect,
maybe David Tennant in a more modern sense, but Tom Baker definitely, like, even in, like, when the Doctor shows up in, like, cameos for, like, Simpsons or Futurama, it's Tom Baker's Doctor that shows up, isn't it? So
yeah, he is the most iconic for sure. Like, you immediately recognize Tom Baker as the Doctor. It's perfect casting.
Yeah,
Barry Letts stayed on Doctor Who to help the new producer Philip Hinchcliffe for a bit, and wound up directing his final Doctor Who story, The Android Invasion, in 1975. When he left the show fully, he became a producer of the BBC's classic serial programmes for 10 years between 1975 and 1985. One of the serials he produced was The Hounds of Baskerville, starring Tom Baker, basically as Sherlock Holmes. Who I haven't seen this serial, but I imagine Tom Baker is perfect as Sherlock.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's an interesting casting for Sherlock. I would like to see it.
Yeah, he could cover it in the show at some point. You never know. He would even direct some of them, including Pinocchio, Alice in Wonderland, and The Prince and the Pauper. He even returned to Doctor Who as an executive producer in 1980 to assist John Nathan Turner in his first season. In the late 80s, he continued directing episodes of David Copperfield's and EastEnders, but after multiple passion projects failed, his love for the industry dwindled, and he began to withdraw from it, which is quite sad. He would still be involved with Doctor Who. He wrote a couple of radio dramas in the mid-90s with the Third Doctor, Sarah Jane and the Brigadier, and he would also write a few Doctor Who books. He was also heavily involved with fan conventions, interviews, DVD commentaries. He was also heavily involved with promoting his show's return in 2005. Barry Letts died in 2009, 6 months after his wife passed away. He had suffered from cancer for many years, and The Guardian would go on to describe him as a pioneer in British television, and Tom Baker expressed his gratitude towards Barry Letts, saying that he was a big link that changed his life. He was in his 80s, so he avoided the curse of dying young.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, lucky him.
But yeah, that's our Barry Letts corner.
Awesome. Lovely little deep dive into his career there. So, we shall now jump right in to episode 3 of The Enemy of the World.
Denny's to save my life was ingenious. But ingenuity requires a constant stream of new ideas. Yours seem to have dried up. I come to the central zone. An attempt is made on my life. Dennis proves to be a traitor. Fethering commits suicide because I uncover him. Do your job, Bruce. You can see they're only this.
All right, take them away.
Take your hands off me!
Salamander, I think it's about time you told me what's going on. 1 minute I see you with this lad McCrimmon, you're working together, the next minute...
I thought he saved my life.
No, I mean before that, in Kent's office.
What are you talking about?
Well, I saw you there.
But I haven't seen Kent in months.
Yes, you were with Kent, the Ferrier girl, and those 2 youngsters. I thought it was so curious I spoke to your number 2, Bennick, about it. That's really the reason I came to this zone.
But I tell you, I must get back to the research center. You will come with me.
It was you. Or someone like you.
Episode 3 begins roughly where we left off last episode. If you remember last episode, we were left with the man that Salamander wants to put in charge with the conundrum of does he join Salamander or does he join the guy that Salamander's trying to depose. And we don't get much of a solution to that right immediately. They kind of just like have a bit of an argument. And the guy's like, I'll stick with Salamander for now. And they go into a back room, and then he just continues telling us information we already know. Like, Salamander, you're forcing me to do this because you're blackmailing me with information that may or may not be true. And Salamander's like, you're right, that is what's happening. You know, that's...
Yeah. You just basically described the whole episode. The whole episode is recapping what the story is so far. There's nothing new brought to the table, pun intended, in this episode.
There is one new thing in this episode, and that, you know, if you're interested in making a thing from a recipe, we go into a lot of detail about that.
Basically that's the only thing, and only new location is the kitchen.
Yeah, Jesus. But then Colin Baker, who is in this episode as well.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's yelling at Jamie because he's like, hey, why are you now dressed in the guard's uniform? Last I saw you, you were wearing a kilt, and why are you working for Salamander now? And Jamie's like, don't worry about it. It's none of your business. And it's a really, really great scene. What do you think about the guard uniforms, by the way? Because we get a really good look at them this episode. We didn't talk about them last week at all, but they're sexy, aren't they?
Yeah, they remind me of something a leather dog would wear. Or, a leather queen and a puppy dog. You know, those kind of videos. Not that I've seen any of them.
Yeah. No, of course not. But yeah, so the Gimps are talking with Mr. Denis, who was the old leader of this area before Salamander is trying to, stage a coup against him. And I actually quite enjoyed this scene where the guards are like treating him like crap until Colin Baker comes in and is like, we treat him innocent until proven guilty. And then the guards like immediately change around their behavior and start like giving him dinner and stuff like that, and I thought that was like, I was like, oh, actually this bit is quite an interesting little take to have on it. Too bad it doesn't go anywhere.
They're also keeping him prisoner in a corridor instead of a cell or something because literally they couldn't fucking afford a new set for a cell, so we just thought, let's just put him in the corridor, which
he's in the waiting room for a meeting. Like, he's waiting for a meeting. But we go to the kitchen, and we're in the kitchen for a very long time. And who's the companion here? That's not Jamie. The other one.
It's Victoria. She's awful.
Victoria, yes. Not her fault. But no. she is terrible. And this is a very long scene where Victoria's trying to get a job in the kitchen to the world's rudest chef. And nothing happens. They talk about food, they talk about recipes, and Victoria's like, I know this recipe for like a cake, I guess. And he's like, cool, peel some potatoes. And it doesn't sound that bad or that long, but it goes on for at least 3-4 minutes.
Do you know do you
pain.
Know the episode of I Love Lucy where Lucy is working in like a chocolate factory and there's a conveyor belt and it keeps going faster and faster until she can't she can't package the chocolates anymore? It feels this feels like a setup to the I Love Lucy episode. It's just going to go off the rails. It's going to be funny. It's going to be it feels like a sitcom. Why does it feel like a sitcom?
If sitcoms are this bad, they would stop making sitcoms.
Sitcoms are this bad. So
are they?
Made a good
I don't
sitcom
know.
at least
at least sitcoms have a laugh track that tell me when to laugh. This is just good silence.
But the fucking the cook has a line basically saying, "Oh yeah, my mum was right," and Victoria's like, "Right about what?" "Oh yeah, she wanted me to become a dustman." That feels like a moment where the laugh track should have kicked in.
yeah, I can see that. Now. Yeah.
I mean, he goes out for a walk because it might rain today, as if that's like the best thing that's going to happen to him today. It feels like a sitcom.
It's so bad. It's so bad, though. It's so painfully bad. And this scene, like, it legitimately does not end. Like, I'm fast-forwarding through it right now to try and, like, figure out how long it is, and it just keeps going. It just keeps going and going and going and going, and nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens in it.
Yeah, and this was, of course, we talked about this last week. Barry Letts said this was the worst episode out of the bunch because it's just filler. And he was definitely right about that. And I cannot understand why the BBC kept this. They chose to keep this episode. Why?
It's the best one. It's the best one.
Why not episode 1 or episode 6? Like, that's the best example of this episode, this whole story. Not episode 3, it's just filler.
Suck.
You haven't even seen episode 6.
Don't need to. It sucks. Episode 3 is the best episode of TV I've ever seen in my life. Then Jamie comes into the kitchen, and Jamie's like, here's everything that's been happening in the previous weeks, by the way. And he gives us another recap. Like, just to catch Victoria up, because she's been so absent from the story, she's no idea what's going on.
We do get Faraya before that, saying, we basically get more of character from her, basically being like, yeah, I hate Salamander too. Get the fuck out of here while you still can, basically, which gives her some agency inside of the story. Like, the only female character in this episode, not including Astrid, to have some agency. Like, why doesn't Victoria have any agency in this story?
Yeah, because writing 2 women characters is too difficult. It's too difficult. We then cut to the Doctor chatting with the guy that really doesn't like Salamander, and the Doctor in this episode still isn't sure if he should help out, and he's like that for the next 2 episodes, basically, where he's like, I don't know who's telling the truth here, and I don't know who's lying to me, so I'm just going to kind of stay out of it and not want to be involved. And it's fine, I can understand the Doctor's reasoning completely, but they really drag out him getting involved, don't they?
Yeah, again, this has to happen for 6 episodes, of course. You have to keep implementing the fact that the Doctor can't trust anybody because, what if people didn't watch the last episode, You have to catch up the viewer, for children especially. Even if they watched it last week, there's no telling if they understood it all. So you have to make things as simple as possible. It sounds like I hate the story, but I don't. This is like the worst episode of the story. Otherwise, the story is completely fine. I love this story.
I hate this story. No, I don't know how it ends yet. We then meet a character that I actually do like, and I wasn't expecting to see more of. If you remember last week, we chatted briefly about a slimy politician dude. He comes back in these next 2 episodes quite prominently, kind of being this smarmy little douchebag to everybody the entire time. And I really enjoy how the actor portrays him. He has the worst haircut of all time, though.
The antagonists in this story are really solid across the board. Salamander and Donald Bruce as well, and the slimy guy. That's 3 solid antagonists in the whole story, and they all have something different going for them. We're not just the same, cut and paste villain. And also, during this whole scene, Patrick Troughton is hiding inside of like a little storage containment, and basically during the camera rehearsals, Patrick Troughton got bored and he just kept on blowing raspberries inside of it.
Amazing. The consummate professional that he is.
I love him, man. He's so funny.
But the slimy dude's basically trying to catch out the guy that doesn't like Salamander. And he's like, oh, these binoculars, I'm sure you've been bird watching. Look out the window and, oh, look, there's the research station. How interesting. And eventually he calls in some guards to take get the dude away and spend a long time smashing up his kitchen for no reason.
He really goes through each individual plate and cup and just smashes them on the ground, and he even makes sure when it's on the ground he smashes them even more. It's like, I think he got the message.
Yeah,
and the Doctor
then they leave being like...
Yeah, the Doctor comes back out and he's like so distraught about ruining fine plates.
Yeah, and they tell the guy that nobody's going to believe that they did this, so they can just continue to intimidate this dude. It's fine, but it does...
Yeah, and of course nobody would believe that they've broke every plate and cup inside
Yeah,
his
'cause
caravan.
what-
Like, why would that
What a
happen?
random thing for them to do. Yeah, what a waste of time that would be. So we then cut to the lady that's got really weird hair, like she has like a really big head or something.
Yeah, Astrid.
Like she looked like and she's like walking through the base undercover as well, and like all the male guards are approaching her. I say all the male guards, all the guards are male. All the guards are approaching her, being like super creepy, being like, "Hey, I can help you out if you like go to dinner with me and drink, or if you sleep with me, ha 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 ha." And it's really gross.
Yeah, like,
But you know,
one of the guys is like, "Oh yeah, you want to have some wine tonight at like 7
Yeah.
o'clock? Let's have a nice meal." And it's just like, do we really need this creepy sexism in this episode?
yeah, the episode will be lost without it. I think it really brings the whole story together. And
But yeah.
it's really.
This scene. Sorry, I cut you off there. You want to carry on your bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think the sexism in this episode was really important, like for the story arc, because like they introduce it and then they don't do anything with it, and they continue to not do anything with it, and I think that really helps the audience like check out, which is what they were wanting. Like,
yeah. Just a little behind the scenes. We watched this episode again when we're recording it. And for the last 5 minutes of the episode, Matthew over here is just playing the kazoo the entire time.
No, I was paying attention.
Yeah, I couldn't pay attention. All I could hear was the kazoo.
You don't need to. Nothing happens.
But this scene with her walking down the hallway is actually another example of Barry Letts being overly ambitious. Basically, to make the hallway seem longer, he just had her walk through the same hallway over and over again, but he kept on having to cut. He kept on having to stop filming the footage and obviously moving some props around, which took a lot of time in the recording, and as a result, this recording time went overboard, so... It was
amazing.
You wouldn't think of it as being overambitious, but for a live production, basically, this was a bit too much for Doctor Who, which is very weird to think of.
Yeah, it is extremely strange. But we then go back to the kitchen where Astrid eventually makes her way to, and she says that we need to save Denise, or somebody says it to her, and everyone kind of agrees because everybody just tells each other information they already know this entire episode. It's just people saying the same thing over and over and over to each other. The chef guy comes back in and interrupts the scene with his nonsense for quite some time. He is, the more that you point it out, he is a sitcom character because he's saying like a crappy joke every 2 seconds.
Yeah, every line is like a joke that you'd expect to have a laugh track afterwards. It's very strange. Like at one point he walks into the room and he has a conversation with people, and then at the end of it he's like, "Oh, this place is too crowded. I might as well leave because I'm the chef." And then he just walks out the scene again. And that's a big laugh. That's supposed to get a big laugh.
Yeah, so funny. Ha 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 ha. But Faria walks into the kitchen after the chef, because it's just a revolving door, this kitchen. And, they're trying to suss out if Faria likes Salamander, if they can trust her to be part of their, like, plan on, like, murdering them. Jamie and that are, like, really on board with getting rid of Salamander. It's only the Doctor that's not on board with it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, why are Jamie and Victoria so like, yeah, let's completely ruin this dude who we don't know and will not affect our lives in any way, when the Doctor's actually considering the moral implications of it?
I don't know. There's not much communication between the companions and the Doctor this entire story, because most of the time they're split up, and also the companions aren't in the next episode, so they're completely absent. So the companions are just an afterthought throughout this whole story, basically.
But we then cut to Salamander and Brucey, played by, of course, Colin Baker from the future, as they discuss something not super important. It's basically just him recapping again why the dude's been arrested, and Salamander trying to convince everybody of his genius master plan. And it sucks. It just sucks. This episode sucks. I don't know how else to put it.
You can say this is where Colin Bruce is picking up the pieces. Oh yes, this Salamander guy is a bit fishy, isn't he? He's kind of considering who he's been following this entire time. He's turned into the good side, maybe. I can't remember if he does it in the
Yeah,
next
we'll
episode
see.
or if it's episode 5 he turns to the good side, but he turns into the good side. Spoilers.
Interesting. Yeah, spoilers. We then cut to Victoria walking down a hallway, and the goddamn chef is haunting her like a ghost, talking about soup still. As Victoria runs in to Federin, who is the man that Salamander is trying to put in charge of this area, and he's given him poison.
And the scene of Victoria running into Federman is another example of Barry Letts being overly ambitious, because the camera is in the position where it's a point of view of Federin. So basically Victoria runs into the camera, and then we move to another camera. But we had to take a recording break to move the cameras again, and we see she's running to Federman, which again takes about 5 minutes to set up cameras properly again. Which,
I think Barry Letts would have loved the digital era when these shots take 2 seconds to do. You don't have to move around these huge, heavy film and tape cameras. You can just be like, press record, done.
And also, in the modern day, it doesn't take. You don't have to record a 25-minute program in 75 minutes. That's fucking insane.
You can take as long as you like with it. Yeah, it is stupid. But they. Federin does some incredible sleight of hand here. Like, if you blink, you'd miss the sleight of hand that he does, where he snatches the salt and, he's going to put, poison in it or whatever. And he does it so subtly, Victoria doesn't even notice him do it. And it would, you have to really study the frame to see him take that salt. It's incredible. It's really incredible.
So we cut to a close-up of his hand moving the salt. But also before that shot, she's looking very closely at the table in front of her. So she must have seen him take the salt. I don't understand the scene at all. It's so
she's
fucking
on board.
weird.
She's on board with the poisoning. She's on board with the poisoning. He's 100% for it. We then cut. Federin is considering whether or not he's going to put the poison in. Spoiler alert: he chooses to not do it. But we then cut to Salamander, who is talking about. He's getting told by a guard that there's something going on or something. What the hell was this scene again? Whenever it cuts to Salamander in this episode, I got so bored. None of his scenes matter until the very end, when he's like, oh, this is where I'm going next episode to do something interesting.
Salamander in this episode comes off as an incredibly obtuse person, because he's just sort of standing around not really sure what's going on in his base, basically. Everybody's telling him,
and his guards are bumbling idiots.
Yeah, or some suspicious activity going on in this base. And he's like, oh yeah, maybe I should check out what's going on. And he spends the entire episode just basically wandering around.
Yeah. Then we have an amazing scene where we watch a man get given a steak, get told he's not allowed to use a knife on that steak and has to use a spoon. Then get told that he can use a knife, but he's going to get his food cut up for him. And then we watch his food get cut up for him. And that's a huge part of this scene. And oh my God.
Yeah.
Agony.
They are just filling out as much time as possible. Nothing is happening apart from this guy getting his meal cooked for him.
That's the entire episode is this man's dinner. This man gets his dinner cooked, he gets it delivered to him, then everybody gets arrested. That is the episode.
That should be the name. That should be the name of this podcast episode. Man gets a dinner.
Yeah, it's a great title. We then cut to a pretty interesting, albeit stupid, scene where Federin is telling Salamander that he couldn't poison the guy, that Denise, he couldn't do it, he couldn't poison him. And Salamander's like, that's okay, give me the poison. And he gives the poison to Salamander. Then Salamander's like, okay, I'm going to pour some drinks now. Don't just forget that you gave me the poison half a second ago, okay? And he pours in the drinks. Shocker, he puts the poison into the guy's drink, and then he's like, haha, you're dead now because you failed me. Ha ha ha. It's a pretty dark scene, and it's acted very well, except for when the dude gets poisoned. He becomes a cartoon. He starts drinking the drink even though he's choking to death. It's ridiculous. It's he's sticking his tongue out his face but
I mean, I kind of like that touch where he's had the drink and he kind of looks at the glass. He begins choking and he looks at the glass. And he's like, I need to drink more, because obviously when you're choking, your first thought is, oh yeah, I need to drink to get rid of whatever's in my throat. But of course,
if I'm choking on water, my first thought is not I need to wash this water down with the water.
no, but it's like an impulsive thing, you know.
The guy's an idiot.
The guy is panicking. He doesn't know what to do in a situation.
He's a moron. But we then cut to Jamie, who for some reason is saying that there's a guard outside or there's like somebody trying to sneak into the building. I don't understand what Jamie's plan is here. I guess just to sow confusion.
And it's
and
that
he's,
annoying. It's the annoying acting of, oh yeah, look over here between the trees, and
Yeah.
there's a man with a gun between the bushes, and it's like, yeah, there's obviously no bushes. You're just overacting, really.
Yeah, and the entire time
And-
the goddamn
and also-
chef is in this scene for some reason making jokes. Like,
Yeah, the chef is like, oh yeah, that's the end of a perfect day. Here's gunshots, and he's like, here, I know the food's bad, but you don't have to go.
why
that
is this
far.
guy a chef? He clearly hates his job. Like,
Maybe he's like the chef
but-
from the menu.
yeah, he wants everybody to die. But then there's like, so at this point, Salamander's basically figured out that Jamie and Victoria are working against him. And Jamie is hiding out in the trees, but he gets like arrested or whatever. And Victoria is like, she gets chased by the guards, and we get this really cool action scene where she like throws the trolley and the camera like pans as the trolley hits into everybody, and they're like firing guns, stuff like that. And then suddenly we just cut to they're arrested, and Salamander's talking to them. It's the most insanely jarring cut of all time.
Yeah. So when I was watching this, I thought, oh yeah, maybe part of the episode went missing. Maybe this was like a 30-second scene which just got cut by mistake or something, and it got lost to time. But apparently, because of Barry Letts being overambitious with the shots I explained earlier on, we didn't have enough time to actually shoot the end of that scene. So we were just like,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
fuck it. Let's just go to the next scene. We're over time. This is like 9:30, and they only had like 15 minutes left of studio time, so you really had to rush these last few scenes out.
Jesus, that must have been so stressful.
Yeah. And because of this, over the next 3 episodes, they got their studio time bumped up to 30 minutes extra. So instead of 75 minutes, they got 105 minutes. So that's an extra half an hour they got, which is, I'm glad they got that, because Jesus Christ.
Yeah, imagine if every episode just suddenly cut to the next scene like halfway through a word.
Yeah, but you're right. It is incredibly distracting. It's just so
Yeah,
jarring.
it's crazy.
You just don't understand what happened.
Yeah, it's like you if you're not paying attention, you like blink, you can get away with it. But like if you're just watching the episode, like imagine watching that on TV. You must have think
Yeah.
like your signal like cut out for a second or something. Like you just missed it. Like. But then, Salamander's like, ha ha ha, I've got you guys, you're all gonna basically die. And he starts chatting with Colin Baker after he takes everybody away. And Colin Baker's like, but I saw you back in Kent's office, I saw you back with that other dude, like ages ago, remember? This is obviously when he thought the Doctor was Salamander, and Salamander's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I need to go back, like, underground or wherever it is he says. Where's the place that he's going?
I must get back to the research center.
The research center, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says that he's going to take Colin Baker with him to the research center. And Colin Baker's like, okay, but if it wasn't you with this Kent guy, then it must have been somebody that looks exactly like you. And they just like instantly figure out, or at least he does, that there's a doppelganger, a doppelmander, salamander, doppelmander, a doctor mander, because it looks like a doctor. Anyway, they basically figure that out, and then the episode ends, which is the entire episode is a man eats dinner, and then Salamander finds out that the Doctor looks like him.
Pretty much,
Like,
yeah.
it
feels like
it sucks.
Yeah. It feels like it could have been the cliffhanger to last week's episode, Like, oh yeah, I saw you here earlier, you were acting kind of strange, and Salamander could have just been like, yeah, I wasn't there. I mean, that's a cliffhanger to last week's episode, but instead we get this whole pointless episode. Which again, Doctor Who needs its filler episodes, especially in the 60s. We're doing 40 episodes a week. They have to do this whole episode in 6 episodes.
I don't know if they need to do the filler episodes. I feel like they felt like they needed to, because they were like, this story has to be 6 episodes long. Does it?
Yeah,
Does it
kind
need
of
to
does.
be 6 episodes long?
I don't think it
does.
did. In terms of like
This could be
budgeting.
4.
Yeah, but when you
4
have to make
episodes.
another episode 2 episodes longer.
Yeah, but do a bottle episode inside the TARDIS. You know,
yeah,
just
okay,
write another
yeah.
story.
Yeah. I do wish we do more bottle episodes inside of the TARDIS. That could be fun, but you know, that would be, I don't know. It's complicated 1960s stuff, you know.
Yeah, but it does not make for super entertaining television. I'll tell you that much, because this episode stunk.
Yeah, it might be one of the worst episodes on its own that we've covered in a while. Definitely.
There's always a stinker whenever we cover Classic Who. There's always an episode that is like, oh my god, this sucks so hard. Like,
but this whole episode, there's nothing to it. It's just all filler. But when we did The Hand of Fear, for example, there's one episode that had Sarah Jane walking through a power plant for like 5 minutes.
For ages. Yeah, for
but
ages.
the rest of that episode felt like something was going on. This episode is
like,
just all filler.
At least this episode like is trying to pretend like it's not filler. Like people are talking as if there's story happening. In The Hand of Fear, like there was just silence. It was just like, we're not talking, and Sarah Jane is just walking now, and you're just watching that. Like they didn't even try to hide it. Like.
God, yeah. If you want to listen to our review of Hand of Fear, the only Tom Baker episode we've covered so far, go ahead and listen to that.
Yeah.
It was a treat.
It was a good time. But now we shall jump in to part 4 of this story, the last part that we are covering this week. Away we go.
What do you mean is, you failed?
I always said something should be done about Kent.
You always say. You say things, but you don't think.
You exceeded your authority, Bennick. A woman's been killed.
Resisting arrest.
Maybe, but you can't just take the law in your own hands. Giles Kent hasn't broken any rules that I know of.
I was sure he'd show himself one day. He was simply building up his resistance group.
Resistance group. The man's a traitor. His people are rebels. Bruce, we must find this man who impersonated me. The dangers are obvious. He could walk in anywhere at any time, pretending to be me and ruin everything.
You can leave that to me.
I hope so.
Bennick, come with me and I'll go over the security arrangements with you now.
Do as you're told.
I think you'll find this interesting.
What the girl Farrier, this? What can I say?
Episode 4 begins exactly where episode 3 leaves off, to the surprise of nobody. What's interesting here with this one is usually we get like at least some bit of a conclusion to the scene, or like the Doctor will like escape death and then we'll cut to something else. And this one we get a repeat of the scene and then we just fade transition to a different scene. Like,
oh,
it's
not
like
just
not
a
cliffhanger
different
at all.
scene.
Like,
but it goes from Salamander to the Doctor, which
yeah.
the shot is kind of wrong. With the Doctor's looking at it a different way than Salamander was, but you know, if it was done perfectly,
fun.
that would have
It's
been
fun.
a good transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun transition. You know, it's a clever idea.
Yeah, it's just Doctor Who's Classic Who's obsession with picking up immediately where the last story ended, and like regardless of how well it connects into the what they want to tell. Like, but in this, we have got the Doctor, our boy Kent, and Astrid are involved in this next little scene where the Doctor and Kent are talking, being like, you know, we've got to find out what's happening, what's going on, and Astrid is like running around trying to get in contact with Kent through a very, very sophisticated hand radio Skype call device.
Yeah,
thing.
it's like one of those mini TVs. I think it was in The Shining or The Simpsons parody of The Shining. I can't remember which one had it. You know, it was little portable TVs you had to wind up.
That all of us had them in 2018. I remember they made a big comeback in that year. But she makes contact with Kent, and then Kent's like, I want some scrambled eggs. And so she makes some scrambled eggs, which is just as well because they were getting watched by the slimy dude. And when you make scrambled eggs, you can no longer look into somebody else's video call or whatever it was that he was doing. And I really liked him, the slimy dude in this episode, because we stick with him for a bit as he cuts over to the guards, and he's like, "Oh, by the way, I know where Astrid is now. We're gonna go find them. We're gonna capture these boys." And he's actually like a really genuinely fun threat. Like, he feels like a genuine threat, whereas like Salamander at this point doesn't feel like a threat at all. He just kind of feels like an idiot. Like,
yeah, Salamander is mostly absent from these 2 episodes, I would say. He's mostly just in his office, standing around. Yeah. But yeah, this slimy dude is probably the highlight of these 2 episodes this week, I would say. We need to start doing the highlight of each podcast, because this is definitely a highlight of the 2 episodes we just covered. He is kind of over the top and hammy, but at the same time, it's not too over the top. It's entertaining enough. And you can kind of recognize he's shouting too much. He's kind of over the top, but again, he's just entertaining, so I don't care. He's fun.
Yeah, he's got like a presence to him where he is giving this over the top, but it's almost like a stage performance where you're like, he's just projecting how much of the slimy political creep that he is, you know. Like, he feels like he would fit right in with the Empire from Star Wars. Like, he would be a fantastic Imperial officer.
That's perfect. It's a perfect comparison. Like, he'd be like in a scene next to Tarkin or something.
I think he gives a really strong performance. We then cut back to Astrid, who like gets interrupted by Faria, who comes bursting into the room, and they have an amazing action choreographed scene. And then like Astrid like is choking out Faria, and Faria goes, "I can't talk. You're choking me," at full volume. Like, it doesn't sound like she's getting choked at all. Like.
Yeah,
but
the choreography,
this is basically
the staging in this whole episode is a bit off, but you know, it's 1960. You can forgive them for that. Yeah. It's Doctor Who.
Yeah,
it's classic
you know,
Doctor Who. It's not as bad as the Vikings last month.
Where they've just got sticks and they're like, I don't know what to do. But you know, Faria's like, I've got information for Giles Kent that will help take down Salamander, so I need you to take me to him. And Astrid's like, oh, damn, okay.
Yeah. To begin with, Astrid is like, I can't trust you. How can I trust you? And Faria's like, for some reason, I just hate Salamander. I hate him to his guts. I can't explain why. But in an early draft, Faria said she hated Salamander because he caused the death of her brother, which is, I feel like that should have been left in the script, you know, it's more of a motive.
Yeah, the most we get in this episode, or at least so far, is like, she says that like, he makes me smile, even when I don't want to smile. He says I have to smile.
Yeah,
so
basically
I want to kill him.
She says that he blackmailed her, but how is kind of left up in the air.
Yeah. But they end up going to Kent's headquarters extremely quickly. But before they go to Kent's headquarters, we cut back to the slimy guy who's like, we're going to go hunt these people down. And what I really like about the start of this episode is it's like a chase, you know? It feels like energetic and actiony, like there's tension suddenly where, you know, these people are trying to get this information to Kent and they're getting hunted down by the guards that are trying to go after them. And then by the time they get given the information, all the guards show up and stuff like that. It's like, oh my god, this is dramatic and engaging. Yeah. Where was this? Where's the chef? What happened to him?
I don't think the chef ever comes back. He's just in his kitchen up for the entire story again. Pointless character. But this is when it starts to feel more like an espionage again. You know, it feels like a classic 60s spy thriller.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun. But Faria's chatting with the doctor, and he's like, "Why do you want to take down Salamander? You know, like, what's this information you've got?" And like, he has this great bit where he's like, you know, proof. There's no proof about this. You know, nobody can prove that Salamander's as evil as you're all saying that he is. And Faria's like, "Oh no, I can prove that he's as evil as that we say that he is. I've got this thing that I've had in my jacket the entire time. This gigantic folder that definitely would fit in my vest."
It's the folder that they stole from Salamander's awful wall safe from the last episode that we never covered.
Yes.
But, that wall safe looks awful.
Yeah, just a big hole in the wall. Hey, no, you'd never be able to tell where it is. It's so well hidden. But this is the like safe that had like all the blackmail in it. And the doctor's like, okay, cool. I'll read this this folder and we'll see if there's actual proof then. Meanwhile, Slimy Man has got his guards completely surrounding the building that the doctor and everybody is in. And there's an airplane overhead. That's an important thing that the subtitles wanted you to know.
Yeah, but I never expected the subtitles to be like, yeah, there's some audible noise in the background. We're not sure if it's part of the episode or it's just stuff, they had to shoot while an airplane was going overhead, but it's here.
It would be a weird, it would be a weird choice to include an airplane in the background, but I guess like it would give the illusion that they are actually outside and not in a studio. So like I could see it being either. I could see it being either.
It feels
it's
like
really loud. It's really loud. But the doctor is like going through. We're cutting quite a bit around here because it's very fast paced. But the doctor is like, I'm not sure if this is enough proof. Still, I don't think that this is enough to even go on. But like, I guess we could try with it. And they're like, so you will pretend to be Salamander? And he's like, maybe. But then they have this really great discussion where he's like, you want me to kill Salamander, isn't it? That's what you want from me. You want me to murder this man, which is obviously against what the doctor stands for.
Apart from in the episodes where he carries a gun,
where he kills people. Yeah,
we've titled
apart from all the episodes. Apart from all the times where he's killed people.
Davros at one time.
Yeah, but besides all the times where he kills people, he doesn't like killing people. And it leads to this very, very, very interesting conversation.
Yeah, and then in this scene also, the doctor's like, I don't know if I can carry it off. I don't know if I can become Salamander. Even though, 2 episodes ago, he did a perfect impression. He fooled the Donald Bruce guy.
Never happened. Don't know what you're talking about. But, then they get quickly interrupted when they start noticing that there are guards outside. And they're like, oh my god, how are we going to escape from here? Meanwhile, we get told that the guards are getting ordered to shoot to kill. They're not taking anybody alive. They're not going to bother with it. They're just going to kill them and deal with this problem here and now. And they're completely surrounded. They're even like, oh my god, maybe we could escape through the fire escape. Then they look at the fire escape and nope, there's security guards on the top and the bottom of the fire escape. They've got no chance of escaping out of here, except there just so happens to be a convenient little, chute. It leads to a completely separate building or something. Just so happens to be in the wall of the office they're in.
I don't know what that is. It's like a little dumb waitress thing, you pull out the thing and it delivers food for you.
Yeah, but whatever. Everybody goes in except for Astrid, who's like, I'll go in behind you, but then she shuts it and she starts shooting at the door. What I did like is when she shoots, there was a muzzle flash for one gunfire shot. It doesn't happen again, it just happens this one, but I was like, oh, that's a bit of effort. As the guards are at the door, and she starts hiding behind a chair really hilariously because it's the smallest chair and it would provide zero cover. She also becomes blind and deaf at this moment because the window is suddenly wide open and a guard climbs in through the window without her noticing, and then she has like a kerfuffle with him, eventually karateing him to death. And then the other guards break in through the front door and they're like, oh my god, she's vanished, and they just kind of leave because they figure that she's gone through the chute and she didn't vanish. She was hiding behind the desk, not even under the desk. She was just sitting in front of it. She was just in front of the desk. Like also, if they just turned their heads and looked left, they would have seen
so when the door's here and basically the table is to the left, but I'm pretty sure one of the guards goes behind the table basically to look at the elevator shaft thing. So if he turned around, he must have seen her, but she's just basically lying there.
He just decided, I'm not going to deal with this. Yeah, I'm not saying anything.
Some really strange blocking.
Yeah, it is like,
but
Yeah.
It's my theory that she was supposed to die here because when episodes 5 and 6, when the script was delivered to Barry Letts for episodes 5 and 6, Mary Peach, Astrid's character, wasn't present in the script, and I don't know what happened to the character, but I presume she must have died here.
And why would they not kill her?
And also,
in the episode then.
because she's a big star of a story, and if she's not there for 2 episodes, people will tune out. So you have to have her in every episode.
Fair enough.
I mean, also, we're just about to get to it, but in the next scene, Faraya dies. So maybe that was Astrid in the original draft, I think. That's just my theory, but it feels like it's plausible.
Yeah, that does sound possible. Because if you can't kill one character because the actor's too big of a star, but you feel like the story, you need to kill a character to introduce stakes to the story, like, why not just kill off Faraya, who's really been doing nothing in this show so far? So yeah, but also, why do you need to introduce stakes? We already had enough stake in the last episode. Yeah, we're going to need a spoon to cut this steak. Right. So, the episode continues as Faraya gets shot through the back and collapses to her death as the slimy guy comes up and he's like, tell me all the information or I'm going to shoot you in the face. And she's like, you just shot me in the back. What is a bullet to the face going to do? I'm dead either way. I'm not telling you anything. Then she dies. Before she dies, she slaps him. In the original script, she was supposed to spit in his face, but this would have set a bad example because it could, in those days, it could spread meningitis, and there wasn't a vaccine for that yet, so it set a bad example. But what wouldn't set a bad example is, shooting somebody in the back and slapping another person in the face. That's not a bad example at all. Nope, that is respectable behavior. But yeah, she dies giving no information because honestly, it's a pretty great way to go out, isn't it? Getting shot and then being like, "Give me information, or I'll shoot you." So, like, you've already shot me, so no.
Her character isn't perfect, but the fact that she goes out with some sort of agency, a female character played by a black actress in the 1960s, perfect way to write the character, I would think.
Yeah. Also, of course, the only black character is the one that dies.
True, but at least she had 3 episodes. She wasn't a silent slave like in Tomb of the Cybermen.
Yeah. But we then cut to the slimy guy getting absolutely accosted by Colin Baker and Salamander. Because he shouldn't have given the order to shoot to kill. It was kind of above his pay grade. And he takes his lumps, so, he tries to defend himself, but he's like, oh, it's okay. Then when Colin Baker leaves, he's left with Salamander. He's like, oh, by the way, Salamander, I've got this file. I think that you'd find it interesting. The file obviously being the blackmail that was stolen from Salamander, which Salamander is extremely grateful to have back again. And the slimy dude gives the best, when Salamander's like, is there anything I can do? What should I say? And the slimy dude just grins. It's the best little shit-eating grin ever.
I was just watching Top Gun today, and his grin reminds me of Tom Cruise. The entire movie in Top Gun, he's arrogant. He is an asshole the entire movie, and he has a shit-eating grin the entire movie. It reminds me a lot of this grin here.
But then Salamander tells a guard or whatever that he doesn't want to be disturbed. He wants to lock down the room that he's in, and we see all these big barrier doors come in. He flicks some switches on a computer, and this huge, it looks like a gun at first, this giant, laser tube thing comes through, but then it's not a gun, he climbs inside of it, and the whole thing, shifts and rotates.
Yeah.
It's a really impressive little, not little, it's huge, it's a really impressive model thing that he's inside.
Yeah, it's a capsule to go underground. The model is so impressive, and also, it's a full-size prop that can rotate. That must have been half the budget of this episode alone, It's super impressive, and it holds up really well, And
it does, it looks so cool.
And when Patrick Troughton is going underground, it keeps cutting between model shots of the thing going down and Patrick Troughton kind of moving as if he's kind of jiggling around. And it's some seamless transitions, because when the capsule lands at the bottom,
the landing is seamless, where it's like
the
sudden,
landing
like
is,
stop.
Basically the capsule lands, the model lands in front of the camera, and it moves so fast. I mean, it immediately cuts to Patrick Troughton inside of the capsule, and it's so seamless. It's so good. I love it.
It really is. Yeah, it is very, very, very good. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Colin Baker is extremely confused that he can't go in to the office to see Salamander, and he calls a guard to try and let him in, and then the slimy dude comes over and he's like, oh, you can't go in there because Salamander's doing a thing that he doesn't like to be disturbed with, ha 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 ha. And the guy's like, well, what if I told you to let me in there? And he's like, I couldn't, it locks from the inside, so we're screwed, you're just gonna have to wait. Which is just another like sow of doubt in this guy's mind about Salamander's like legitimacy and saneness as a leader.
Colin Bruce is like, I'd understand if he wanted to be locked up in the laboratory.
He's Colin Baker. It's Colin Baker who time traveled in the past to shoot an episode of Doctor Who. That's what happened.
But yeah, I like the bit where he's like, yeah, I'd understand if he wanted to lock himself inside of a laboratory, but a record room, that doesn't make any sense. Like later on in the episode, it's implied that Salamander has been in this position for at least, at maximum, 5 years, because nobody in the underground base knows who he is. So over the 5 years, he's just been locking himself in this record room, and Colin Bruce just never noticed, never questioned it until now.
I guess things have been smooth sailing enough until now that he didn't need to constantly check in with Salamander, but now there's like this doppelganger, salamander, there's this doppelganger going about, and there's like people being killed now, and there's like people getting thrown out of power and now he's already got the seed of doubt in his mind, whereas before he wouldn't have had the seed of doubt, so he wouldn't have even thought about it. But now he's already suspicious of Salamander, and now he's noticing that Salamander's locking himself in the records room. He's like, okay, something is actually going on here,
And what's going on down there?
What is going on down there is Salamander comes out into a room made of bubbles, because there's like this weird like orbs all over the wall, and it
looks like the Dalek bumps in a way.
Yes, it does. It does. The room is made of Daleks. He comes out and he's holding his clothes and instead wearing a dirty jumpsuit. And we're like, what the heck is going on? And then we cut to a bunch of people in their pajamas, all walking around, like looking at like files and papers and stuff like that. And they're like, oh my God, Salamander's back! Yay! Oh my God, I'm so great, he's back. And then this guy Colin is like, I'm gonna tell Salamander to take me with him because this is getting ridiculous. I don't believe anything that's going on. And him and his girlfriend Mary are pretty. They're like the main characters from this underground base that we get to meet, and I quite like both of them. A dude comes through and he's like, Salamander, give me a hug. I love you so much. And Salamander's like, no, don't touch me. I'm covered in radiation. I'm dying as well because of it's so bad out there. Like the world is so irradiated and horrible, and I'm dying. And he like goes into a machine that pretends to cure him of his radiation or something.
No, I think he just reads his radiation because he's like, one day that Geiger counter isn't going to come down, so I'm going to be full of radiation. I won't be cured. So. But this subplot is so much fun. It just comes right out of nowhere. You don't expect this coming, do you?
No, it does come out of nowhere. Like the whole time thinking with Salamander, I was like, maybe he's an alien dude, or maybe it's just a coincidence and he does just look like the Doctor, or maybe he's like wants to be a dictator guy. I didn't think that he had a underground collection of people that he was convincing it was the end of the world, a la Cloverfield Lane.
Cloverfield Lane is a good one. It reminds me of that one episode of South Park where Eric Cartman is trying to get into Kyle's birthday party, but Kyle can only invite 3 friends. So he locks Butters in like an underbunker base and pretends that the world is ending outside so he can go to his birthday party.
Amazing. But yeah, he's lying to these people. We don't yet know why he's doing it, though. That's what we don't get answered in this episode, is we don't find out why he's lying to everybody down here. Like, what's his end goal? to get down there. But he says to everybody that they're going to celebrate because he's found even more food for them outside, and he can bring it back. But things are so bad upstairs that they can't go to the surface yet. And Colin demands that when can we go to the surface, and he's like, I'll tell you when it's safe, which is not an answer. It's a very politician answer, which I actually quite liked, because Salamander's this like great politician. And he's like, I'll tell you exactly when. I'll give you an exact date, and that date will be the day that it is safe for you to go upstairs.
Also, Patrick Troughton in this scene is kind of giving off another performance. This is like his fourth performance in the episode. He's a much kinder, rational kind of man. He's just a normal dude.
He's more like down to earth. He's more trying to be a helpful rather than like a charismatic, like all-knowing dictator. He's like, oh no, I'm just going out to get the food for you guys so you guys don't have to do it. Shucks. But then he tells everybody that they need to check the like meter levels on something, like the walls or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And they're checking it for faults. And meanwhile, Salamander is having a cigar in the back, being like, "Oh yeah, this is so important." He's just giving them a meaningless task so that he can have a smoke and a relax.
He's also reading the newspaper, I think, which comes into play in the next episode.
No, so it's Salamander's got a collection of people that he's lying to for some strange reason.
Yeah.
Then we cut to the Doctor, who's getting his makeup done to look like Salamander.
But the problem of this scene is I don't see the resemblance between the two actors at all. They don't look anything alike.
Yeah, I don't know why they thought that they could get away with the plot point by casting somebody that looks nothing like Patrick Troughton to play Salamander.
And also the Doctor isn't in this episode much at all, to be honest with you, over the last 4 episodes. So I guess Patrick Troughton just went on vacation.
Yep. But as that's happening, we see a pair of boots walk into the room, and the Doctor is extremely shocked to see who those boots belong to. We don't find out who they belong to, and instead the credits start to roll. I haven't seen episode 5 and 6, so I have only got a few theories as to who they belong to. My leading theory is it's Colin Baker, because it's like leather boots. Like, who else would it be at this point? I'd be really shocked if it's the slimy dude, if he just changes sides, but somehow I don't think that's going to happen. That brings us to the end of episode 4, which is so much better than episode 3. Not a lot of stuff happens to progress the plot forwards. We don't see the Doctor really at all in this episode. We see him very briefly at the start, where he's just like, I don't know if I want to be Salamander. Oh, okay, I guess I'll do it. And then halfway through the episode, it turns into a completely different story where Salamander is now underground with this huge collection of people. But that is an interesting enough twist that this episode stays entertaining and makes you want to watch the final 2 parts of the story.
For a 6-episode story, you need a huge pivot at the end of episode 4 to keep the next 2 episodes interesting enough. You can't just keep the status quo the same the entire time, because we were kind of getting bored last episode. That's because it was filler. This could have been This could have been a great 5-parter rather than a 6-parter. One episode lets the whole thing down. But episode 4 is a major improvement.
Yeah, episode 3. You could skip episode 3 and not miss anything.
Yeah, all you need to know about episode 3 is, Salamander now knows the Doctor exists. Well, he doesn't know it.
Yeah, but they do that. They do that at the start of episode 4, because at the start of episode 4, it opens up with Salamander being like, "Oh, there's somebody that looks like me," so you could skip episode 3 completely.
Yeah. But the highlight of these 2 episodes, I think this could be a recurring segment, the highlight of this episode. The highlight of these 2 episodes is the slimy dude. His performance is so campy, so good, and so much fun to watch.
Yeah, he's a great slimy politician man. Superb actor. I don't know what his name is, but he did a great job in this episode. Well done, sir.
I could go look it up. I don't know his character name either, so it won't help.
No, I don't know his character name either. Overall, these 2 episodes, mixed bag. Episode 3, pretty meh. Episode 4, fantastic time.
Yeah.
I don't know if have you got any other final thoughts?
No, I'm excited to get into the final 2 episodes of a great Patrick Troughton serial, 6 episodes, 5 episodes are great.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad batting average for Classic Who, you know. But next week we will be looking at parts 5 and 6 and concluding our time with both the Second Doctor and this story, The Enemy of the World. This year, our gimmick, if you do not know, is that we are looking at every Doctor in chronological order. So last month we looked at the First Doctor. This month we are looking at the Second Doctor. It's been very fun so far, looking at some pretty fun little stories. And we will be back next.
The 2 episodes we've covered so far are completely different, you know. They're not the same,
they
you
are.
know. Like, one was like a weird sci-fi story and the other one's like a espionage. It's great.
Yeah. It's great. It's very, very, very good. And in the meantime, you can find us on Facebook at Who Watches Who, on Twitter at Watches Doctor. You can find this podcast on YouTube at Who Watches Who, where it is available in video form. I'm waving at the camera right now. You can also find it in audio form wherever you listen to podcasts. There's a bunch of links in the description. You can find me on Twitter at Cloth223. I feel like there's something else. You can email us your thoughts and opinions on Doctor Who at whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com, and we will read them out at the end of the month in our monthly news roundup podcast. That's whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com, or just leave a comment on the YouTube or on the, I don't know where else you leave comments. Facebook, send us a message on Facebook. Do whatever you like. You know, I'm not your boss, as much as I would really like to be. But until then, we will be back next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.